Have you ever been sitting in a perfectly quiet room, completely relaxed, maybe reading a book or just staring out the window, and suddenly your wrist aggressively vibrates?
Yes, absolutely. And instantly, your heart rate spikes. You lose whatever peace you just had.
Exactly. You look down, expecting some sort of absolute emergency, and it is just your watch telling you to stand up, or that you missed your daily step goal, or that your boss just sent an email. It is almost comical. We have strapped these incredibly powerful mini computers to our bodies, ostensibly to make us healthier and more mindful. But more often than not, they just feel like a demanding digital parrot sitting on our shoulder, constantly squawking at us.
It is the ultimate irony of modern health technology. We are using devices that inherently cause psychological stress to monitor our stress levels. It is a completely cyclical trap.
Which brings us to a massive quiet shift happening right now in the wearable space. We are moving away from the loud, screen heavy real estate of the wrist and sliding down to the finger. Today, we are unpacking a really fascinating competitive angle in the tech world. We are looking at the absolute titan of the smartwatch industry, the Apple Watch, and contrasting it with the rising philosophy of smart rings, specifically focusing on OXYZEN. The core question we are exploring is this: when it comes to sleep, stress, and true physiological recovery, does the finger actually have a biological and psychological advantage over the wrist?
It is a question that completely redefines how we think about self-tracking. For the last decade, the industry consensus was simply more. Put more sensors on the device, give the user more charts, send more notifications. But we are hitting a wall. People are experiencing extreme data fatigue. They have a mountain of health metrics on their phones, but absolutely no idea what to actually do with them.
Let's start with the giant in the room. The Apple Watch is practically the default definition of a wearable today. It has mainstream brand trust, a massive, seamless ecosystem, and it has genuinely saved lives. It is essentially a medical dashboard on your wrist.
It really is, and we have to respect the sheer scale of what they have built, especially regarding their FDA-facing health features. Just look at their 2024 sleep apnea notification feature. They didn't just throw a casual algorithm together, they validated it heavily against clinical reference testing. They are using accelerometer-based breathing disturbance analysis. In their testing reports, they noted a 95.9% specificity. That means if the watch says you do not have sleep apnea, it is almost certainly correct. It is a phenomenal piece of broad health technology.
That is incredible for a consumer device. It is a broad health and productivity powerhouse. You have your ECG, your fall detection, your text messages, your calendar alerts, and your boarding passes all living in one place.
But that broadness is exactly where its strategic vulnerability lies. The Apple Watch is a generalist. It is trying to be your doctor, your personal trainer, and your secretary all at the exact same time. And from a psychological standpoint, that is a very messy intersection.
Right? Because you are trying to track your deepest, most restorative sleep using the exact same screen that delivers your most anxiety-inducing work emails. The medium is the message. A device built for constant connectivity and productivity cannot seamlessly become a device for pure disconnected recovery.
Exactly. It creates a baseline of psychological friction. You are taking the noise of your waking life into your bed. And that is exactly where the smart ring category and OXYZEN strategic positioning completely changes the game.
So let's pivot to the finger. For a long time, smart rings were viewed as just fashion gadgets or maybe a niche toy for Silicon Valley biohackers. But there is a 2025 systematic review in clinical medicine that completely shatters that perception. It is the validation study that nobody talks about, but everyone in the health tech space should be paying attention to.
Yes, that review is a watershed moment. It looked closely at smart rings in clinical settings and found strong accuracy for heart rate variability, and sleep detection. It noted that earlier pioneers in the space dominated the initial research base, which essentially paved the way for the entire category. It proved that finger-based wearables aren't a novelty. They have a serious, scientifically validated pathway.
Why is that though? What is the actual biological advantage of the finger over the wrist? Because intuitively, the wrist seems like a fine place to take a pulse.
It comes down to anatomy and movement. Think about your wrist. It is bony, the skin can be thick, there are a lot of tendons, and you move your arms constantly throughout the day and night. It is a very noisy environment to try and capture a clean optical signal. But your finger? The arteries are incredibly close to the surface. There is much less intervening tissue. It is practically a direct, quiet pipeline to your cardiovascular system. When you are measuring something as delicate as heart rate variability, which is the tiny microsecond differences in time between your heartbeats, you need the cleanest possible signal. The finger naturally provides that biological advantage.
Which leads us perfectly into how OXYZEN is positioning itself in this crowded market. If Apple is the broad health and productivity dashboard, OXYZEN is framing itself as a specialized recovery intelligence ring. Their official positioning is health intelligence you wear. They aren't trying to replace your smartphone, they are trying to interpret your physiological balance.
That is a brilliant strategic divide. OXYZEN's biggest unique selling proposition isn't that it gives you more data than an Apple Watch. In fact, their entire philosophy can be summed up as less noise, more meaning. They are focusing purely on sleep, stress, cardiovascular health, and recovery. They want to turn real data into real transformation.
Less noise, more meaning. That is such a crucial concept right now, because raw data without interpretation is just a new flavor of anxiety. It is like handing someone a massive, complex spreadsheet of their car's engine diagnostics while they are driving down the highway at 70 miles an hour. They don't need a spreadsheet. They just need a dashboard light that says, your engine is running hot, pull over.
That is the perfect analogy. We have entered this strange era where people wake up, look at their wrist, see a sleep score of 62, and immediately feel stressed out about it. The data actually harms their day. A device focused on true recovery intelligence shouldn't just dump numbers on you. Instead of saying your heart rate variability is 42 milliseconds, which means absolutely nothing to the average person, it should act as a translator. It should say, your nervous system is heavily taxed today, prioritize rest and skip the heavy workout. That is the translation layer.
It really makes you step back and look at the societal cost of the whole quantified self-movement. We have spent the last decade obsessively tracking every step, every single heartbeat, every calorie. But are we actually any healthier? Or are we just hyper-aware of our biological flaws?
That is the ultimate philosophical trap of modern technology. We constantly confuse measurement with improvement. Just because you weigh yourself 10 times a day does not mean you are getting fitter. It just means you are obsessed with the scale. We have turned our own bodies into another digital inbox that we have to check and manage.
Another inbox. That is a terrifyingly accurate way to put it.
And that is precisely why the invisible nature of a ring is so powerful. It does not have a screen. It does not vibrate with a text message. It just quietly observes. The smart ring category has the clinical validation evidence growing behind it, and a brand like OXYZEN is perfectly positioned to translate that category advantage into practical, everyday health intelligence.
To be clear, we aren't saying OXYZEN is clinically superior to Apple across the board. That wouldn't be accurate without OXYZEN having its own massive library of published validation data. Apple has a mountain of FDA-cleared research for what they do, but OXYZEN doesn't need to beat Apple at being a medical smartwatch. They just need to win the category of focused recovery intelligence.
Precisely. Apple wins the scale of general health tech. But when the question becomes specifically about understanding your overnight recovery, your stress patterns, and your true physiological state, the finger has an advantage the wrist simply cannot ignore. OXYZEN is betting that the future of wellness isn't louder technology, but quieter intelligence.
Quieter intelligence. It is a profound shift in how we interact with machines. We are slowly moving from an era of wearables that constantly tell us what to do, to an era of wearables that help us quietly understand who we are.
And maybe that is the ultimate luxury in our hyper-connected world. Not having another glowing screen demanding your attention, but having an invisible layer of insight that respects your peace of mind while helping you navigate your own biology. It is about reclaiming your biological privacy from the noise of the digital world.
Reclaiming your biological privacy, that is a deeply powerful thought to leave on. As this technology continues to evolve, the most important feature of your next wearable might not be what it shows you, but what it hides from you until you actually need to know. Think about that the next time your wrist vibrates in a quiet room. Until next time, keep questioning the noise and listen to what your body is actually trying to say.